It's my pleasure to introduce Tobin Lehman, who's the founder of New North, an award-winning digital marketing agency dedicated to helping business-to-business technology firms grow. With over 2 decades of working with brands like Southern States, Pfizer, Thermo Fisher Scientific, Kimberly-Clark, and a host of others, Tobin's earned an industry reputation for taking the mystery out of marketing with clear strategies that earn real results. He currently resides in Frederick, Maryland, with his spouse and 5 children. You can learn more about Tobin and his business at ridethetornado.com and newnorth.com. So now it's my pleasure to turn the webinar over to Tobin, who will talk to us about measuring your lead funnels. Thanks, Tobin.
Awesome. Absolutely. Thank you guys for coming this morning. I know it's an early morning and we're going to jump into some good and hopefully fruitful conversations for you guys as you think about lead funnels, digital marketing, and all of those good things. So this one is one of the kind of conversations that usually generates lots of homework and lots of questions. So even before we get started, I would say, sit back, digest what you're about to see, what we're going to talk about today. There'll be some, kind of suggestions near the end of some thoughts you can take forward from there. But feel free to reach out to me after this. I mean, my contact information through the website and all that stuff. If you want to talk more detail about it or how you can kind of go through it, because I'm going to probably challenge some assumptions you've had today over lead funnels and what that looks like and how to really handle funnels. We've seen this done so poorly in so many cases, so well in so many cases. And so today should hopefully kind of allow you to realign some of your thoughts in that process. So the big, kind of challenge with the funnel is a lot of cases, they don't mean anything. So when we talk about funnels, we're talking really about kind of our marketing process or our sales process, or really we're talking about this process we're trying to monitor and kind of make sense of and ultimately make predictable. But the challenge we see with most funnels is they're unpredictable. At the end, most people really can't create any kind of predictable outcome from their funnels. So if they say, well, we got some late stage deals, like, well, how confident are you in predictability of those actually closing? And the room falls silent. The ultimate goal of a funnel is to create some predictability, but most funnels, again, have a level of unpredictableness. So my goal for today is hopefully give you some fresh perspective on funnels and kind of how we look at that, new, better ways of kind of tracking and managing a funnel. And then, with time permitting, we can actually go through some bonus, real tactical stuff in terms of what I call unclogging the funnel. So once you establish it, the idea of moving your items through the funnel, how do we kind of handle some of the challenges that exist in a marketing perspective? This conversation will definitely bridge both marketing and sales. So it'll definitely have some good stuff there. So let's first talk about the funnel. What is it? Well, simply the funnel, when we're talking about this, is a metaphor, right? The funnel is a metaphor. It's not an actual thing. There's no real definition of it. But what we're talking about basically is a process where something moves through it, and there's typically more at the top and there's less at the bottom. That's the basic definition of when we say funnel. So it's not really a technical term. You wouldn't have a quiz on this in like marketing 101 in school or anything like that. The funnel is just something that's been colloquialized through sales and marketing language. So you may have also heard other metaphors. Like you've heard the funnel, you've heard the cyclones, people use that. You've heard the pipeline, it's another phrase, or life cycle. All of these phrases kind of point to the same idea, is really this management or monitoring of a process that moves something from one end of the process to the other. And really it finds most of its fruit in the marketing and sales world because it's typically unpredictable processes, right? It's really understanding what makes someone go from totally unaware to now a customer. And as much as we wish we had full control over that process, we don't. And so we basically handle it in this metaphor of like, well, there's a bunch up here and there's a little here, and we do some stuff and it all kind of shakes down through. And that's just the truth of it. There's really just not as much, full control over something like a funnel process versus like, maybe how you process an invoice or something. You have more control, your team's in line and that kind of stuff. It doesn't involve an outside force. So that's really the tracking aspect of it. And, it really doesn't matter what you track with it or how you kind of track it, but what matters in that process is the reality of the people or the items or whatnot going through the funnel. So when we're tracking things through a funnel, the best funnels track what's what I call reality. A lot of funnels, when we talk about, or see, track certain aspects, and we'll get into different elements, but they're actually pretty disconnected from what I would call the reality of a buying process or reality of the customer's world. They're very internal, they're very process focused, and that's not ultimately, I believe, what the best funnels do. So let's talk about a little bit what the goal of a funnel is. We talk about this a little bit here, but the goal of a funnel, anytime you create a funnel, is to increase the predictability where it's missing. We in sales processes, marketing processes, we're basically going in a domain where there's not a lot of predictability in terms of creating outcomes. But funnels help you track that process, that journey you're on from one end of that kind of process to the other, where you don't have full control over that. Because ultimately, dealing with people and dealing with things that are unpredictable is just messy. So how do you really create logic, create systems in a situation where people are at play specifically? Because people are the most variable things in our world, right? Everyone has different needs, different ideas of how things should work and how they should kind of happen. And so decision-making in a lot of that funnel process just becomes messy. It's really 2 different leads or 3 different leads in your funnel at one particular stage may have totally different kind of aspects of what's going on in their world and how they're viewing decisions. And so again, a funnel helps us kind of make sense of all those variables and kind of bucket them kind of as best as we can. So let's talk about kind of building a funnel. Now we've kind of set the stage, so to speak, here for funnel building. So the first thing I would talk about in building a funnel, and a funnel contains what I would call 3 things. So I'm going to go over these 3 here in order. I would say they're items, stages, and forces. So if you're scoring at home, it's items, stages, and forces. So what I mean by that are items, the things that we're going to track in the funnel. And we'll dive into that here. Stages are then obviously the stages of the funnel, the different pieces of the funnel, the progress we're going to go through. And the forces then are the things that actually move that person through the funnel. So let's first talk about items. What are we tracking in a funnel? And this question alone will basically change your whole idea of how you would handle funnels. So what are you tracking in your funnel? A lot of cases, we would maybe say we're tracking deals. Okay, we're gonna track deals. Great, let's track deals. Some people may say, well, we're tracking people, tracking contacts. Okay, you can track contacts. You can track companies. All of these things you can track. But ultimately, as you're kind of hearing me go through this process, the light might be turning on for you, realizing, well, based on what we're tracking, wouldn't it change kind of the funnel? And you're absolutely right. Whatever you end up tracking or deciding to track will dictate the funnel you go on. A lot of the kind of issues and errors we see is when a lot of times you start tracking one thing in your funnel and it changes to something else midway through the funnel. A very common example of this is tracking a contact through a funnel when they were getting warmer and warmer, and all of a sudden it turns into a deal. And now it's a deal they're tracking. They're tracking a contract with a number on it, no longer tracking the person. Well, that changed. So how do you manage a funnel when the thing you're actually tracking changes? Because the person's still the person, but now you've attached this deal or this other item to it. Or you're tracking a person and then you're not tracking a company, that person leaves. Well, are you no longer tracking the person, or are you tracking the company? And so do you switch to the company? So what you're tracking really does matter in terms of how you build your funnel and getting pretty decisive about it. And again, just kind of going through a little bit of an example of this to give you some ideas. So we're tracking contacts, or we're tracking contracts, right? A really good example of this is, let's say you were a contract manufacturer, and part of your work is, you've got kind of retainer-based clients, and you have a funnel where, current clients come to you and say, we want to manufacture X amount of this part, or X amount of this part, X amount of this part. You may be tracking legitimately prospective contracts with these different customers through some kind of funnel. That makes total sense. That same company, though, may have a new business development that's tracking companies and contacts, because ultimately there may be one contract that comes at the end of that engagement, but they're tracking people because they don't have any deals or contracts to handle. So their funnels could be totally different. Now, a lot of cases when we come in, the funnels are exactly the same. They just treat them all in one big CRM, one big kind of Salesforce piece. And there's this ultimate confusion because some things have money and some things have names, and it's all over the place. And obviously we probably advocate for 2 different funnels, but deciding what you want to track in your funnel totally gives you a better sense of clarity in terms of what you're trying to accomplish. So if you're tracking people, then track people. If you're tracking contracts, now, obviously, if you're in sales and marketing, there's got to be dollars that enter into the frame somewhere, and there's ways to kind of handle that. But I just want to emphasize as we kind of start through this process, thinking more and more about what you want to track, because if you're able to track something consistently, it aids to the ability for predictability. So let's go a little bit deeper here now. We talk about that. So let's talk about stages. So stages then are the parts of the funnel that we kind of walk through. So there are so many different models for stages. You probably have seen these different funnels. I mean, I just grabbed a bunch of different screenshots. Everyone has their own kind of way of looking at kind of marketing funnels or sales funnels. A lot of them start with, awareness at the top. It's a pretty basic idea. There's some consideration, conversion, or interest, or consideration or desire. The IADA is pretty popular, model as well. And so there's ways of matching these things. And pretty much every marketing software or any marketing team or sales team is going to have their own kind of model they typically work through. And these are good. These are stages. These are kind of interesting ways of kind of breaking it up. And, there's also ways of looking at funnels based on not just what I would say are kind of like stages of progress towards close of an item. So you're looking at something like this, you may be thinking, well, they're tracking a person based on kind of their perception of the company. Well, there's other models of tracking leads where you can look at them in different aspects of the process or the person themselves. Where are they in the process of budget or allocation? Not so much are they aware, or are they ready to close, but have they determined a budget? That's a legitimate lead stage. For example, you may have a the stage similar to this where you've got your awareness, your interest, evaluation, et cetera, and you can work through definitions. The lead funnel that I use is actually a 3-stage lead funnel that has nothing to do with awareness, consideration, or any of those kind of things. It actually has to do with budget, authority, need, and timing, because those are better predictors for me or our company on whether a deal is going to close. It doesn't really matter whether we've sent the proposal, right? Whether we've met with them one time. Like, these are process-based funnels. You may see, we sent the proposal, they're at the last stage. Well, that's not predictable. You send everyone a proposal. The reality is, where's the buyer? So the stage really comes into play when you start thinking about what is it that we're tracking, and what are the influences that then kind of work that, and what do we want to track in that decision process for that thing, that company, that person, that deal. If you're tracking contracts, for example, you may use a different series of stages. Did it get to procurement? Did procurement give it an okay? Do we have a pre-approval on the budget? Did you get an initial write-off? All of these stages would be defined then obviously by the item, and then thinking through what are those kind of pieces that go into it. So let's talk about some common errors with stages, and I kind of alluded to a couple of these. The first one I see is really the wrong perspective. A lot of time, so when we're talking about funnels, we kind of build it inwardly focused. What's our process, or what's our way of viewing things? How are we viewing this contact? How are we viewing them from our perspective? Because we want to report numbers. Typically this happens when you've got a sales team or marketing that reports to a CEO, and they want to know things like, well, how many contacts have we talked to this month? Or how many phone calls have we made? Those are great metrics, but they're not really indicative of whether someone's going to close or not. It's really more your actions. So if you want your funnel actions, that's what you want, but it's a wrong perspective, honestly, in creating a funnel. It thinks more about what's going on internally and what's going on in the customer's mind, or where they are in that process. Another one is time as a stage. Time is not really a good indicator of closing. We have some people who have funnels that have 24 to 48 month long close periods, or kind of selling windows. Some that have 3 to 5 days. So time as a stage is not ubiquitous by any means. It means that you shouldn't be tracking like how long someone's. It doesn't mean you should be tracking how long they've been in the funnel, but really saying something like, this is where they are based on how long they've been around, or this should close in 30 days. That's kind of tricky as a error. Also tracking process. this is probably the biggest thing that we see that's really just not helpful, is again tracking process as a funnel. So if you're saying, okay, I met with them, had the initial meeting, that's a stage, or I sent the proposal, or I checked in the proposal, you could finish that stage over and over again and have zero predictability of whether someone's going to close or not, because you're basically just tracking your own process. You're tracking your process. You're not tracking the customer or the item or the contract. You're just tracking your to-do list. And again, I think that comes from just more of a cultural indicative of wanting that state data or stats or kind of reporting up the chain. But the reality is, if you talked about that item or that contract, like, looking at, do they have budget authority? Do they have they kind of have they asked for testimonials? Have they asked for customer references? These are all better indications of someone trying to close than whether you've sent the proposal or not, right? And actually, I can send, like, from our perspective, and we have a service industry business, and so I can send lots of proposals out, but those would be all very top of funnel items for me. More lower is, again, budget authority, conversations around the right contacts, or have they expressed the time that they want to get this work done. A lot of times people are interested, like kicking tires, right? Well, how long is it going to take? I may be interested. I'm like, well, do you have a timeline when you want to have this accomplished? Well, no, not really. That's a low intent buyer for us. Because typically if you want to get something done, you're a little bit more intent. So again, thinking about what things you've heard or kind of been through with your customers, your potential items in your funnel, that really give you a better idea of whether something's going to close or not, again, to increase your closing rate. And process is typically not one of them. And also just vague stages, like consideration, awareness, like these are all great, but what do they really mean? If there's no real meaning to it, it's not customized. Typically, if I see a funnel built and it's just got those stages, my first question is like, what does awareness mean to you? And I ask 3 different people and I get 3 different answers. And so having more clarity on your stages, it should almost feel customized. You should look at your funnel and say, this is our funnel. It's got some unique stages to it. There's maybe a stage that not every company would have, or kind of unique to our industry. It should be more customized to what you accomplish. Having a 4-stage funnel may be good for a textbook, but I think ultimately you could have 3, you could have 2, you could have 10. All depends on what makes most sense for your business, and it's clear. You understand what can happen or what should happen in those stages. Again, stages need to tell us about the items on the journey, and that's really that vagueness kind of clarified a bit. So if your stage can tell you about where that item is on the journey, that's ultimately the most helpful piece of information you can get from a funnel. Knowing someone's aware is great, it means they're aware. But what does it mean that someone's ready to close or someone's ready to buy? What does it tell us about them? Like they've got budget authority, or they've got timing correctly, or they've seen a contract and they've given you an initial approval, or they've expressed references, whatever these different attributes you may come over in your world, or you've got an initial PO, right, from a contract, whatever it may be. Those funnels should tell you more about how likely that's going to close or finish that process based on your stages. So one of the bigger challenges is, the stages should also tell you like what's next, right? What's going on in that process. As we start transitioning from like think about items, stages, and then getting the forces, obviously as marketers, as salespeople, we're all kind of bent a little bit on kind of making action happen. So you get your items, get your stages, what naturally then kind of comes there is the third item, which is really forces. And it starts pushing this idea in our heads of what can we do to kind of build that process forward for someone? How can we influence? How can we help them go to the next stage? Can we start seeing some of those items build out? And really, can we now start to then influence inside of a lead funnel and a marketing funnel, doing the right next action to do that? So let's build some meaningful actions. Let's talk about forces a little bit. So this is the last thing. The forces in the funnel are really what's driving that thing forward. And if you can really understand the force behind your item or your thing you're tracking here, whether it's a contract or a deal or a person or a company, you can understand what is the driving force. Why are they moving this forward? What is the intent, or what is the piece of information or the kind of operational piece that's moving this forward? And if that doesn't exist, it's gone. Or if we can amplify that and bring that forward, it continues to move. And so that understanding that force is a real big, kind of piece of that. Now, understanding that means we can do some work. we can really start pushing into actions based on those stages. So if you think back to some of those examples we talked about, whether it's consideration, awareness, or you're looking about timing and budget, once we understand those stages, as marketers, as salespeople, we can start applying the right forces to those stages. And by that, I mean, we can message, right? We can do emails. We can do what we do well, which is communicate and kind of help solve problems. We can solve the right problem based on the stage that they're in. Someone who's aware has a different kind of communication pattern, and what they need is someone different than who's in a later stage of the funnel ready to close. The communication, the message, the modality of all those pieces can change. If someone's ready to close, obviously you're not, you're talking more personally with them. And the awareness side of the funnel, you're maybe talking more broadly with like newsletters and things like that, trying to work them down to that funnel. So the force we can apply to, kind of goes that direction. Now we all kind of feel like this a little bit as marketers. We're trying to do things and kind of move people through the funnel and kind of get that bull to move through it, and they're kind of coming after us, but it's really challenging to do that. We can't always just prescribe actions to a funnel like that. We want forces. We want to be able to apply things in the funnel and say, okay, based on my awareness, I'm going to start sending people personalized emails now to move them to close. And we can do that, but it's not always that we're going to get them through. And so a lot of conversation comes up in the marketing funnel space saying like, well, what is it that kind of does this? Is it the person that moves? Is it the marketing that influences them? It's, to me, it's a little bit of chicken and the egg kind of conversation as we're talking about, doing marketing inside of a funnel. I think it's a little bit of both. There's a little bit of intent coming from the customer side. There's a bit of what you do too that can influence that. Some cases, some industries, it's more than others. It just depends on what you know about your space. If you have more of a consumer good, more of a want than a need kind of thing, you may be able to influence more. You may be able to put cool graphics out there, do more Instagram, do more marketing, and really drive up that need. Like, I really want that. I've seen more and more of the images. But if you're in a B2B context, there could just be budgets and realities and meetings and things you can't really influence as much. And so you can keep marketing, but you may not move people through that funnel to any degree as you'd want. So let's kind of talk about this. Let's just unpack this in a case example so we can, see this and how it makes sense. So let's just kind of put an auto shop here. So if you're from an auto shop, this will be really relevant to you. If not, you can kind of use this as a metaphor to kind of understand how we would think about this. So if you're in an auto shop, you repair cars, you may have a simple kind of 5-stage funnel. Awareness would be an activity or something for the user themselves, or maybe they saw an advertisement for your shop. They drove by, they saw the sign, they're aware of you, right? They're aware of Charlotte's Auto Body, right? They're aware of that company. To consider someone engaged, maybe they've been to the website. They've been to the website, so now they're not just aware, they've actually engaged with your brand. Maybe they've opened an email somehow, or they're part of that process. They themselves have visited, they've done something. This is where they are in their minds. In need, maybe they've called and they've talked to someone and they've submitted a quote. They've expressed some aspect of need for that service. I would move that contact to an in need funnel. Intent, they've scheduled service, right? Now, again, they haven't paid anything yet, so I wouldn't consider them closed, but they've scheduled service. So it's a high intent deal. I'm sure if you talk to any auto body place, they tell you like not everyone that schedules an appointment comes. I mean, maybe the same for hairdressers or other industries too. Like just because they schedule doesn't mean they show up. So they're really close though, very, very intent. But then obviously closed, they've arrived to the shop and the work begins. So that's that user's journey. That's the intent they're going through. Obviously they have some kind of need for their car, they're trying to get fixed. And that's the process they went through in kind of the funnel, if you will, and kind of taking their process and their world and matching it to a funnel. So let's take that now and look at forces we could do inside of that funnel to really talk about that. So let's talk about aware. We could be doing acquisition campaigns. So again, they saw an advertisement. The amount of advertising that we would do as the auto body would affect how much of that awareness kind of funnel gets full, right? So if we're doing billboards, we're doing Groupons, we're doing Yelp, whatever kind of outbound or awareness kind of marketing we would do would increase the amount of people that are on the top of that funnel that are aware. You may have them, you may not in terms of in your database, but you're increasing that kind of awareness to your auto body shop. Engaged, Well, outreach marketing, email, social media, you're now getting engagement. People are interacting with your brand to some degree, whether it's visiting a website on the subtle side, or if it's reading an email, opening an email, things like that. There's an engagement level to your funnel. And that's a really valid thing. Some people, I think we all sometimes get a little, antsy for the close and think, well, we got 500 people opening our email, but who cares? We have no business this week. Well, you do have 500 engaged people. So 500 people who are on the sidelines, so to speak, engaging your brand. So we always look at engagement metrics. This is a good indication of how much we've got awareness going, because eventually that need will bubble up for them. In need, any kind of direct response campaigns you could be doing. So whether you do, like the auto body shop could be doing seasonal oil change coupons, or any kind of schedule a quote now activities, any kind of direct response. We call that in marketing direct response campaigns, where they move into that submitting a quote or that call process. Those campaigns could be doing to influence that, as well as intent. We could be then when after they've scheduled that call, that quote, the messaging could change to like unique selling propositions. What makes us unique as an auto body shop? Really closing the deal, benefit statements, testimonials. The marketing itself shifts. I don't think particularly that I would necessarily put out a ton of testimonials, so to speak, in the awareness area. It's nice, it's good to see, but I think it makes more sense when someone's really intent and they're kind of, wringing their hands a little bit like, is this the right place? I want to get this work done. I'm really intent. And now the assurance part of it comes into the equation, and I give them testimonials, benefit statements, guarantees, these kind of easing the tension, easing the risk, so to speak, as they move further down the funnel. So the messaging starts matching the funnel components. And obviously close, this is where you're going to get into pricing, USPs, just really specifically getting down to what messaging makes the most sense in that process. And so people will go through this different aspects. And obviously someone who's aware or engaged may look at the pricing page, and that's legitimate. That's totally fine. And this funnel could happen in 5 minutes, could happen in 5 months. It really all happens pretty quickly. Someone can come to your website and fill out a submission form in 3 minutes. We've seen websites happen faster than that, but you'll probably see some funnel like this where they go through, they find what they need to find, and then go and kind of go to the next step and from there. So hopefully that made a little sense in terms of like taking both a kind of user's view or like your customer's view of their world, mapping that to a funnel, and then backwards, then mapping it to what kind of marketing activities you could do to really kind of enhance that funnel. So I'll pause there and just see if there's any questions here before I kind of jump into the second step in terms of like measuring a funnel and kind of creating it. So what questions kind of came up in that process? And I know Ashley's monitoring the chat, so you can put some questions in the chat and we can look at those.
No questions at this time.
All right, crickets, we'll take it. Good, well, hopefully this is resonating, getting some good stuff from this here. So let's talk about measuring the funnel. So just recapping, we've got our items, we've got the stages, we've got the forces that are moving through that funnel. Now let's start talking about how we measure that funnel and how we do some good stuff with it. The number one reason for poor funnel performance and predictability is bad data. Really the biggest challenge to any of this obviously is having good data. A lot of us may know the back of our hands which customers are close to closing based on gut experience, but then translating that into data is really, really critical. And so that's why a lot of sales managers talk about putting in lots of notes from the sales team into the CRM. The CRM really becomes a lot of the data components of something like this. But as you go through the lead funnel, you have to shift from just managing emails of opportunities to really putting good data into your tracking system. A lot of systems like Salesforce, any CRM typically will have a funnel creation section. HubSpot has one for free. You can do Salesforce, Pipeline Drive. There's a lot of CRMs that go in there. Even MailChimp might even have one, a very minor one to kind of look through. But the ultimate success of your funnel is going to be in your data quality. So let's talk about what we want to start looking at when we talk about metrics. The first thing we want to look at is just count, sheer count. How many people or how many contracts, how many items are in our funnel? Pretty simple thing to think about. But that's one of the first steps, right? Is getting how many things are in there. So whether you're tagging that information in your CRM or how that's working, to understand how many customers are in each phase or how many contracts are in each phase of our funnel. Once we've defined it by items, stages, and forces, now I say, well, how many are actually in there? What do we kind of come to? And that's the first thing. Once we have count, the next thing we want to look at is conversion percentage. So again, the funnel metaphor here is all about things moving from the top to the bottom. That we call that a conversion percentage. What's the conversion rate, the percentage of people moving from stage to stage in that funnel? How many people go from the top of the funnel to the bottom of the funnel? Pretty simple idea, but that conversion rate helps you understand a lot. And this is where you really start unlocking the power of funnel-based marketing. So this is going to have an exponential growth here in the next few minutes, how you see this process working. So we get count set up first, then we're able to get conversion percentage for each funnel stage. And then we can start looking at kind of what that looks like. So very simple metrics, some common metrics to think about, visitors to contacts. One of the things we always look at in New North is how many website visitors, which could be a top level aspect of your marketing funnel, turn into actual contacts. 1% is a great metric to kind of start with, pretty simple one. Or how many proposals do you send end up closing? That's one of your stages or final stages. 30% is pretty common, I think, for a lot of businesses in our space. So if you send out 10 proposals, you expect 3 of those to close. And you should see that with some regular consistency if your funnels are set up correctly, because again, we're building predictability into some of that. So as we understand that, obviously we can do more with it. Ultimately, because we're in sales and marketing here, we're not just creating a funnel of volunteers. We could do that, but in a lot of our cases, there's going to be a dollar value assigned to it. And so if you can understand the dollar value in a funnel, that's super helpful. Your sales funnels will ultimately have dollar value because probably commissions and things like that involved with it. But even the marketing sense, I would say dollar value is really important to have assigned to someone or some opportunity as soon as possible. It helps us understand a lot of data going through. So I would always advocate having dollar value be something part of your marketing funnel. Here's why that matters. So when we understand the funnel, we understand the count, we understand the conversion rate, we understand the dollars, we can really start doing some interesting conversations. And if you work in a big organization, this is kind of important to think about. This is a really basic funnel, but I'm gonna give you the brass tacks here. We use this kind of calculations all the time. So it helps justify certain things. So let's say I have 300 potential people in our funnel, and I'm just gonna do this progressively, that we have a 10% conversion rate from awareness. Cool. Well, that means 30 of them are gonna go to exploration, right? These are kind of 4 basic stages in a fictitious funnel. Of those 30, 10% others will go into intent. They'll get an actual contract. And maybe 33% of those close into a deal. And that deal is worth $30,000. Well, now we can actually reverse extrapolate the value of each one of those contacts all the way up to awareness. Let that set in for a minute. Now I can understand that for a $30,000 contract, that means every person in that awareness funnel has a potential value of $100 because we know that one of them is going to make up for the others. So why is that important? That's critically important when you start thinking about things like cost of acquisition. How much dollars does it take to actually bring people to your awareness level? If you can bring people into your awareness stage for under $100, you're in a good place, right? You can start actually now seeing what a cost of acquisition looks like into your awareness funnel. If it costs you, $1,500 to get someone into your exploration phase, it's not quite working well because your deals and your close value is not enough to actually make up for it in the end. You start looking through it. So this is where the power of those 3 items, the count, the conversion, and the dollars, start to really give you some powerful decision making as it comes to marketing. So if you can build awareness contacts at $1.50 off of LinkedIn ads, well, great. Go do it because the numbers are in your favor in terms of what that conversion rate looks like from a contract perspective. Obviously, you'll do this over time, over full engagement. That's really the power of something like this, is you start to be able to see those elements. Obviously, you can look at days in stage too. Every business is going to be different in terms of what the days in stage looks like. So you could have someone who sits in awareness for 3 months, till they're ready, right? It depends on what the process is. Some businesses are very timely. We have a customer who was in like kind of basement foundation repair, and that was either you need it or you don't. You're not kicking around basement repair as a good way to spend your tax return. It's like either you need it or you don't. So our funnels were very short, versus someone who maybe worked for a consultant or is thinking about a big renovation. They could have a very long sales funnel or days in stage. So have it go through and think about what it looks like. And you can actually probably see your current rate right now and make some good inference there. Lead scoring is another kind of advanced way of thinking about the funnel too. As we talked about a lot of those validations of what brings someone into a funnel. Lead scoring, which most CRMs can do to a certain degree, give you the ability to actually score leads based on behaviors. So what makes someone in the awareness stage really attractive? Well, maybe they've been to the website X amount of times. Maybe they've opened a certain amount of emails. You can actually score them based on their behaviors. So if they've been to the website a lot, maybe they've viewed pricing page a couple times. A lot of the CRMs now will actually give you scoring in a greater context to actually do this. And this is huge in the B2B space because we have such longer buying cycles and bigger contracts. Maybe harder if you have more of a consumer business to really spend time on this, but you can basically score them based on their behaviors, demographics. So you can kind of see your leads, and get greater predictability into which leads you should reach out with and spend time on. So there's lots online about lead scoring, if that makes sense. Last thing I'd leave you with too, to talk about that last conversation we had about kind of the dollar per acquisition, is acquisition channel. Ultimately, now that you kind of see the funnel, you see the top of that funnel, there's things that lead into that funnel. And we call that kind of the acquisition channel. Like, how are you acquiring people into that funnel? This is a screenshot from a piece of software called HubSpot. It's one that we use quite a bit. And it gives us some basic ideas of what sources brought contacts into our website or brought contacts into our funnel, right? Drop them in the top of the funnel. We see organic search bringing in about 33 contacts, direct traffic bringing in X amount, paid search, email marketing, referrals. We can even go all the way down to customers and kind of see some of that attribution there, contact to customer rate 3%. So we can start seeing overall conversion rates, data like this that allows us to be able to say, okay, great. Well, looks like from this this sheet, we should really be investing more in organic search. It's doing a lot better. Now, this is a very limited scope. This is probably early in the month when I took this screenshot, but you can start now seeing how that data all goes together to look at your close rate all the way up through your funnel, even to the acquisition channel, to say which channels are the best investment in the long run for us to kind of grow, and how are we really building that investment out. So the more marketing you do, the more you'll want to kind of think about this as you go forward. But just to review, because we talk about measuring the counts, obviously by stage and conversion rate, stage to stage, overall dollar value, lifetime value, cost per acquisition, lead scoring, and obviously acquisition channels as well. All of these are good things to build into your funnel to measure. So pause right here. If there's any questions, I assume not, but we'll go here. I'll talk about unclogging the funnel a little bit.
No question, just people asking about the recording. I think it's great content. Everyone wants a copy.
Yeah, good. Well, good.
So
Okay.
this is good. Thank you.
Well, I warned you ahead of time. This is going to be a lot to make you think. So I think this is one of those things where it's a great thing. I'll just be brutally honest with you guys as you're on this. This will be very profitable for everyone to get a really good grip on this. Don't overdo it. Don't overdo your homework here. Like, get a good funnel, operate it, kind of work through it. But ultimately, the funnel itself doesn't do anything. It's just a measurement tool. Right? It's a tracking tool. Having a beautiful funnel isn't going to close any deals, but it'll give you insight and data to actually be able then to do some marketing. So let me briefly go through this, and then we'll go through some Q&A if there are any. So once you have your funnel set up, you understand what you're tracking, you're going through it. Let's just talk about some common issues we kind of run into. And this is really where New North typically gets called in to do our work, because people have funnels and they have these challenges inside their funnels. And they actually speak to their funnel like, hey, we don't have enough in the top of the funnel, or we don't have enough closing items in the funnel, or we got some stuff stuck in the middle. And so we call it kind of unclogging the funnel. If you don't have enough top of funnel, so TOFU is top of funnel. Gotta put in the parentheses there too. That's an awareness issue. So if you have enough people in your funnel, like you say, I don't have enough people I'm even talking to right now, or enough in my funnel, that's when you need to go into what we call awareness marketing. You need to do more outreach, more outbound kind of activities, whether you're going to buy an email list, or you're going to do more social media, try to drive people to your website to convert on a content conversion, having places to convert people. And by conversion, I mean like going from an anonymous user to a name or an email address, whether you're doing an ebook or some kind of content conversion, some kind of free offer. All of these things are ways to convert your traffic to contacts. But ultimately, that's where probably I'd say 60% of the marketing effort is spent is really in the awareness side of it. It's saying like, let's get more people into our funnel and kind of bring them to the breach of the funnel. And if they can kind of get in there, great. But you can do that time and time again and be constantly doing that. Paid media is another good thing. But this is all about, we need people. Sales guys will say, we just need more people to talk to. Well, that's good. That's how the funnel will help do that in that process, but not neglecting people that are already in the funnel too. Contacts don't become leads. Hey, Tobin, so we did all that work. We got content conversion. We got like 500 or 6,000 people in our MailChimp and we're emailing them every month, but nobody ever like reaches out for anything. Hey, totally get it. I think that's probably where a lot of people, as they build funnels, end up getting to, is a place where they've got the funnel. They've got people in the system. I call this the fish in a barrel syndrome, and it's a blessing in disguise, or at least maybe a blessing ignored, where you don't have to go necessarily fishing in the ocean every week. You've got your own barrel of fish here. These people who have opted in, that have said your content's interesting, kind of in range, something they would potentially be interested in at some time. And so you nurture them. You build up campaigns around those contacts and going through. Maybe you're highlighting some of the needs or challenges they potentially have that your product or service could serve. Or you're using that time to build relationship and reach out. You're doing direct mail or direct DM kind of contacts on social or whatever it may do. But you're really nurturing through that process and starting to understand where they are. This is where lead scoring comes in a lot too, like how active are they? And also segmentation. If you were here for the last webinar about segmentation, it's a great place to start segmenting those who are like maybe just fans of your company, like your uncle who's not really ever going to buy anything, but then like vendors or colleagues and things like that, really getting a good idea of what goes on inside of that funnel so you can do more activities with it. But if there's typically a stagnation, there's probably a reason either in your list or you're not really doing anything that then move forward. You brought them in, but then they get ignored, honestly. Leads don't become opportunities. That's a tough one. I think that's more of a content challenge, honestly. If you've got people that are, seem interested, but they're not really ever kind of asking for proposals or pricing or things like that. I think ultimately there's a process challenge there, but you could have some assurance challenges. Like, what are you doing to assure them that this is a legitimate product or service? Do you have testimonials? Social proof is a big phrase in terms of like logos on your website, things like that, or even just being more explicit about your product specifically. A lot of times we all think we're really clear on what our product and service is, but again, kind of nurture them through that process. And also, like when you get to that stage where you have more information, like a lead, that's where I think the still the personal contact comes in. And again, the B2B space, our leads are a little bit different than just in volume, but that's where the phone call comes in, the personal phone call, the reach out. This is where the sales team really starts to take over when they're trying to move to the opportunity phase, kind of seeing if there's opportunity, creating cadences for catch up and kind of touch base with them. The impersonal nature ends up hurting this stage too. So being more personal when you get to that stage is real big. And opportunities don't close. That's even bigger picture question, right? If opportunities don't close. So we sent out 10 proposals and none of them closed. It's almost not even a marketing question at that point, but we have a little bit of conversation about that. Is that a unique selling proposition issue? Is it a pricing issue? And everyone will always tell you price, but that's rarely ever it. There's value in pricing, so it's typically a value conversation. If price was an issue, no one would buy a Porsche, but they see the value in something like that, so they spend the money to do it. So money's never really the issue. It's the value that they see for the money. And so if opportunities aren't closing in your funnel, you're not closing enough deals, I would look at trying to understand what value they perceive from your company or from your service for the price that you're asking. And if there's a disconnect there, obviously there's not going to be closing. So they perceive similar values to your competition is 20% less, then price would be the factor, but price isn't the issue, value is the issue. So typically we get to there. Wonderful. Well, we got through it. We laid in a bunch of information about funnels and everything. But again, just leaving you with this. I mean, a good funnel is going to increase your level of predictability and really allow you then to guide your action for your rate of growth. Good, steady growing companies understand and manage and work the funnel to then propel their growth. And that's really the key to all of it. So some next steps for you guys. Review your funnel stages. If you were convicted or got caught on the carpet by having a process-based funnel, I would recommend you change it. Look at how you can make your funnel more predictable. Look at your past year or whatever and say, what really did influence these things through the funnel? Was it their timeline, the school year? We've certain clients that works on a school year basis. And so all their deals close after school lets out because all the schools are open to actually think about things again. So there's other things that matter in the funnel than just what you've done to make it happen. Get your metrics in place, start with the counts, the conversion rates, things like that. Start a dialogue about tracking better conversion, especially with your sales team. Then start attacking the weakest stage first and build it from there. If you have not a lot of awareness or you have a lot in the middle stages and not really moving anywhere, start with where you feel like the weakest challenge is first and go from there. A lot of marketers like myself, or if you find marketing agencies in your niche, they'll tell you what your industry conversion rates are. Like I can tell you that 33% for proposal to close is very indicative of a certain type of industry. Some have higher, some have lower. Your business may have higher and lower, but talk to some people in your space and you'll get some good ideas. It's also a good conversation with other business owners saying like, how are you converting, from an awareness to close? So what's it take? So good conversations there. Start bottom up if possible, because if you can close half more than adding more on top of the funnel, you obviously make more business. So we just typically start our funnel work from the bottom up. And obviously use data to make informed decisions. So if you kind of screenshot this or get the presentation later, start here, a little bit of a plan of attack for you as you go forward, kind of building this funnel, but you'll reap lots of fruit from having a good, strong funnel and be able to then market and make insights and build data out of it. As Joanne mentioned, this is book Ride the Tornado. So a lot of this funnel conversation, a lot of that thinking about this process and data is in the book. So you can check it out. It's on Amazon. Go get a copy of that. It'll give you some really good ideas of how to then take the funnel and work through it and kind of build and experiment and do fun things there. So definitely recommend checking that out. And obviously, thank you guys for all your time here today. And you can find us on Instagram, you can find us on Twitter, and obviously you can find me on LinkedIn as well from here. So thank you guys.